start this. Let's go down. So, okay, good. Yes, I welcome everyone to today's talk, online talk, Handball Without Borders. And my name is Nicola Scholl. I'm the founder and director of the organization PlayHandball. And today's talk will be about handball in school and from boarding school academy to afternoon programs. So how is handball actually established in schools in different countries, and also how is it at the moment with sports in school in general with the situation of the COVID-19 pandemic. For this reason, we have invited different guests from different places of the world. I'd like to welcome Ali Pole, is the president of the South African Handball Federation from South Africa. Good to see you. And I also like to welcome Edson Chiroodza from the Zimbabwen Handball Federation. He's the Secretary General there, but also is involved as in the teacher commissions and has different heads in regards to sports and handball in the country as well. So then there is also Leif Johnsen, Christensen. He is a teacher and coach in Denmark at the IKAST Handball Academy, but also in a club and at a boarding school. So he will give us a bit of perspective from the Danish side of handball. And last but not least, I also like to welcome Frank Hamann. He is joining us from Germany, from Hamburg. He has a lot of experience in professional handball as a coach, as a coach instructor as well, IHF master coach. But since recently, he changed actually into the recreational part or educational part more. He is now a teacher at the primary school in Hamburg. So welcome, Frank. Before we dig into the topics and start the discussions, I would like to also introduce Sim. Sim is my colleague in Cape Town in South Africa as the project coordinator from PlayHandball. And I would like to go over quickly to Sim to just introduce us to the rules of the game for today. So that means what are we all need to be aware about. So.
Great. Thank you, Nicola, for the introduction. And I'd like to welcome our guests as well as our participants to today's online talk. So for registration, please, can I ask you to write down in the chat box your name, your surname, the organization you represent, as well as the country you're presently in. This is just for information purposes and also for our data analysis when we write a report at the end. And for the duration of this online talk, can you please ensure that your microphone is muted if you are not saying anything, and that your camera is off throughout the session, just to save data for many people. If you want to say something, you unmute and feel free to open your video if you want. For questions, if you want to ask a question, please use the Zoom chat, and I'll be moderating with Nicola, and I'll be in between the session, choose questions randomly and ask to the speakers. So please, when you ask a question, write down the speaker's name so that I know that it's directed to them. If it's a question to all speakers, you can keep it open, and yeah, whichever speaker will answer. Due to time, we've only got an hour and a half, so not all the questions will be asked. So please forgive us for that. And yeah, if you have any questions, put them in the chat box and I'll be managing that. Thanks, Nicola.
Thank you, Sim. Okay. Thank you, Sim. So before we start, I also would like to quickly just tell a bit why are we doing this talk. So PlayHandball is a youth and sports development organization, and our aim is to build capacity within existing organization, grassroots organization, but all create perspective through through our programs. And through these talks, we like to create more transparency in the situation of handball, to create an exchange between different players who are involved in handball in different fields in the world, and to actually start a dialogue across borders, where we're not always listening to like maybe the strong handball countries, but also listen to the countries maybe where handball is not as strong established, and also see what are they doing to improve the possibilities of youth and for children to do sports in general, but also in particular handball. And so one thing I just wanted to mention here, because we are an NGO, a non-profit organization, and this also talks will be free of charge. The speakers are here to share the experience, but we would like to also establish and develop our capacity building programs more and more. So always welcome to share and follow us on playhandball.org or play-handball.org, or even on Facebook or Instagram, play.handball. So if you want to see what we're doing, what's going on, so please just follow us. And even if you feel like you would support the programs and you like what we're doing, you're also always welcome to donate. So, but for now, that's enough of marketing and information and background information. So now I really would like to start with the talks, because that is why we're here today, and that is why also everyone who, logged in behind the screens to also get to know what's going on there. So for the speakers, all the speakers are welcome to have the video on. So Frank, you can have your video on, please. And Edson, you also can have your video on, so that we can see each other in the conversation, only for the audience who logged in. So it's always easy to have the video off. So the purpose today is actually that we speak about handball in school, but also at the moment, everyone, the major topic, what the whole year have been, is not necessarily handball development. It has been COVID-19 pandemic. And for this side, I would like to know, Ali, maybe you from your side first, how is the current situation in South Africa, and how has this actually affected the sports in school in particular? Can you give us there a short insight? Ali, you need to.
Good afternoon to colleagues. I really appreciate the opportunity granted to the South African Handball Federation. I really must be the first one to acknowledge that 2020 was a mixed year for us in as far as handball in schools is concerned, because initially our target was to ensure that by April this year, we be having 180 school-based educators being capacitated in as far as coaching and referees is concerned. Right on the brink of starting with their workshops, COVID came in and the workshops had to be aborted. As way back as last year, we had resolved that by 2022, we must see our footprint being available in over 7,700 schools throughout the country. By virtue of not having workshops for educators, that particular dream is being negatively affected. At the moment, we are also fighting to ensure that handball become school sport. It falls within the school sport because we are not yet there. So had we gone ahead with the workshops, we were going to make a compelling case towards us being considered to be included in as far as school sport is concerned. So 2020 was not a happy year for us in as far as handball in schools is concerned.
Do you know, Ali, in general, how is the sports situation in school? Not requiring handball to come to that later, but is the school in general? Is sports taught in school? Forbidden?
I could not get the question clearly, but from what I pick up, I can safely indicate that since the beginning of COVID-19 in March, all sporting activities across all the schools in the country were stopped. It is only recently, towards the end of the year, that minimum participation was given a chance to take place. And then most of the codes were allowed to play without spectators. And it's only now that we are moving into level 1, where we are able to organize some friendly matches there and there in order to resuscitate. But we are continuing with our internal small-scale workshop for schools across the entire country.
Thank you, Ali. Thank you. Frank, I know you have been, since August only, if I'm not taken wrong, teacher now at a primary school in Hamburg, Germany. So have you been able to teach sports at all? Tell us about that.
Yes, hello to everybody, and thank you for the invitation. Yes, I'm happy because we at this time we can educate sports in our gym, and we have to be careful with the kids. But it's possible to have sports, but only less contacts. Some runnings, some jumpings, some small games, and so on. And so at this time, we don't have many ill people, so we can teach sports in our gyms.
And did you use a different approach to what you were first thinking about, or is it just general school sports as you were expecting to do it?
It's very difficult because of COVID. So, for example, if we do some gymnastics, I don't have to touch the kids for a helping situation or something. So I have to do some very simple exercises so the kids can make it on their own.
Okay. Good. Leif, thank you, Frank. I know that Leif, you are a teacher at a boarding school, and maybe a boarding school can be considered like a safe island, so where everything is enclosed, where nothing doesn't necessarily come in. So how is the situation on your side? Or how has it been this year in regards to sports and handball?
Yeah, also from me, thank you very much for having me. It's nice to meet all of you. Yeah, if I have to compare, we are in it's not a lucky situation, but we are allowed to play handball. All the kids and the youngsters in Denmark are allowed to play games. The seniors are not allowed, only the professionals. So if you're under 21 years, you are allowed to you're still allowed to play handballs in the weekends. You're allowed to train handball. But from this morning off, some of our regions has closed down for the sports, like others of you. All over the schools, so they have been sent home also. But if I look at the whole year, our chance has been that from March to summer, we didn't have much sports in the school. Then the summer came, and the virus or the infections numbers went down. And when we started the boarding school again this year, we are allowed to do gymnastics. We are allowed to play handball. So luckily for our students, they are allowed to play handball and train handball, even though they are even allowed to play games. So we are, for our sake, a good situation.
Thank you, Leif. Edson, from your side, because you're also not only the Secretary General of the Zimbabwean Handball Federation, you're also part of the Teacher Commission. And I was wondering, have the teachers been able to do sports lesson in schools in Zimbabwe?
Yes, thank you for having me. Our situation in Zimbabwe at the moment in schools is that for a long time schools have been closed, but we have since opened, and our teachers in schools have also started teaching, including sports studies, physical education, sports science, and sport management. Those are some of the subjects in schools. So they've already since started teaching, and those at final level, they've all started taking their examinations, including final years. But coming to the issue of handball in schools in terms of competitions has also been banned due to the impact that COVID-19 has brought to Zimbabwe and other countries in the world. So in Zimbabwe, the situation at the moment, we have not had any competitions, but as an association, we've managed to engage teachers through online training in terms of coaches training. We have had some virtual trainings for teachers, but also importantly for handball activities in Zimbabwe, we have since received approval for resumption by our government. Following that, we had to develop some protocols to ensure that handball activities can start in the country. So we have since received approval, but based on our protocols, that each team that wants to start handball activities has to go through some testing, some bio bubble or isolation to make sure that the people that are going to start engaging in the activities, they are also operating in a biosafe zone. So that's the current situation pertaining to handball in Zimbabwe. But for our schools, if they also meet the same demands of testing and meeting other protocols, they also now can start practicing and having some games. Thank you.
So that means, Edson, if I understand you right, that the teachers, so you generally have handball in school, and the teachers has been able to teach sports in schools, but there were no schools competition allowed. Is that correct?
Yes, that's the situation. And already in our schools, handball existed from primary up to secondary schools. And we've had some organized competitions that runs from the lowest levels, from the clusters, zones, district, provincial, up to national. So all such kind of competitions are the ones that have been stopped. But for a teacher in a classroom or physical education lesson to teach some handball skills, that is taking place, that is happening since schools have opened. Because all schools are working with some standard operating procedures to ensure that the kids are safe during their practice.
It's interesting to hear because now we have in Zimbabwe, handball is actually a school sport, as you just say, and it has been, there are competitions in the school. Leif, can you tell me a bit more about your work at the school, and maybe also in regards how much is actually handball established in schools in Denmark?
We have it's a different, I don't know, different school system, but you can start in our government schools from the year of from your 6 years until you're 16 years, you go to schools here in Denmark. But when you are 15 or 16 years, you can go to a private boarding school, like where I'm sitting right now. And you can go here. We have lots of these types of schools in Denmark, and you can choose to go to a sports school. And that's where I'm working right now. So I have the women's or the female players here. We're about 30 players here who are living here, going to school. They are having their social lives here. And then they are playing, we are practicing handball, and then they're going to the clubs in the evening. So when they're going to the clubs in IKAST here, they are playing matches for them. But me as a teacher here, I'm here at in the morning. I'm teaching historics, and then I'm going into the halls and practice handball with the girls. Then we eat dinner together, and some nights I'm here as a teacher or as a grown-up to be a part of the school. We have 200 students here at this school. So the girls train handball 4 times a week with me and my colleagues. And then they can go to the clubs at the evening 2 or 3 times a week.
So that means that you don't have the school club. So the school provides a professional environment, like say, where you also have other sports as a normal subject in school. But
yeah, the students, we have 6 different sports here. So you go to school, all the children together. But when we go into athletics or sports, they have one sport they choose when they start at this school. So we have 35 girls who has chosen to play handball for a whole year here. You're only a student here for 1 year, and then afterwards you maybe go to the academy or the college, or you go home again. There are students from all over Denmark that's coming here, living here for a year. Some of them are playing football, some are playing volleyball. So we have 6 different sports here. So you choose your own sport that you want to do at the time as you are a student here. So in the normal teaching, they go into classrooms together with the football players and the volleyball players. And that becomes a big part of their social life the year they are here. So for us, it's important that they develop as a person. So they try to work hard with their individual personal development. It's important for us that they work with the handballs and develop there in the sports. And then, of course, also the school, so they can get an education.
Nice. So that means at the boarding schools, as you just said, just for 1 year. So the boarding school is from 15 to 16, as I understood it. And then they can decide what they're going to do afterwards. If they go to college, it's not anymore boarding school, but they can go in the academy, which is like an extra training then.
Yeah, then you go to gymnasium afterwards for 3 years, and you go there and you can. We also have a school here where you can live. It's not the same place where I'm sitting here, but in the near of. And they go there for 3 years, where they take a gymnasium education, and at the same time they live there, eat there, play handball. Then it's more likely the clubs who's taking. They are responsible for the training in the morning, and they go to training 3 times a week. And when they go to the academy or the college, and then they practice again at night. So in Denmark, you can go to school and be specific in handball from the age of 13 years old, and then you can play handball in schools until you are 20 years.
Nice. Yeah. Tell me, Frank, how is it in Germany? So there are so now you have been in professional handball before. Now you're in a primary school. But from your further time as a coach and coach instructor, so how kind of possibilities are there in Germany for such, what Leif just said? Are there academies? Is there possibilities, or how is handball in school established?
Yeah, in Germany we are not as good as in Denmark. We only have a few handball schools or boarding schools. We can have many more, I think, and I hope some clubs will build up some boarding schools. So we only have some very good clubs, for example, in Dortmund, Leverkusen, or in Buxtehude, and they will educate the girls in their training sessions in the evening. But it's not as good as in Denmark, I said. On the other hand, handball in school is in Germany very difficult. Because we have handball in our curriculum and in some schedules for sport in school, but the teachers step back because handball is a very complex sport with many rules, with many techniques and tactics. And if they don't know handball, teachers are afraid of this sport because it's hard, 1 against 1 and so on. So it's the problem. If you have a handball coach as a teacher, it's no problem, because there's a bit of knowledge and they can educate and teach handball in school. But if you have a normal sport teacher, he will only educate athletics or gymnastics. And so we try to develop some concepts especially for elementary school or primary school, to move all pupils. We have 20 to 24 pupils in a class, but we only have 1/3 of a sports hall, because we have not so many sports hall. We have to take or have to put 3 classes at the same time, and so we have 3/3. And so the teachers say, we don't have any goals, we don't have any lines, and it's a problem to play handball. And so we have to develop some new ideas. And In some regions in Germany, we have very good teacher and very good persons who can play with 24 pupils at the same time. So you have to build a new court, maybe small courts, and then you can play handball. Not in the original idea, but maybe 2 against 2 with some smaller balls. And then you can develop step by step to handball.
That's interesting. Thank you, Frank. Ali, because you mentioned just before that handball is not yet a recognized school sport. So you as a federation trying to change that and educate teachers to be more interested in handball, but also probably bring it more as a school sport into the schools. So what is the situation at the moment? Are you is there an interest from the teachers towards the sport? I need to unmute.
Thanks very much. The interest from the schools educators is massively impressive. The only thing that we are awaiting for is the opportunity to really connect and start with our virtual workshops, because we are now being overtaken by events if we are to wait for COVID to pass over. So we are currently in engagement with International Handball Federation towards coordinating virtual workshop for our educators. One other advantage we have seen with these virtual workshops, it gives us a broader pool of participants as compared to physical workshops. So we are committing ourselves towards maximizing the opportunity given by virtual workshops in ensuring that rather than limiting to 60 participants at a go, we go beyond the 60 that we're targeting at each center. So we are planning to have that by early March 2021. Over and above that, towards stimulating interest from our government, both the Department of Education and the Department of Sport, we have committed to organize a national competition for schools across the country, of which one of the provinces, Limpopo, will be hosting. We are currently sourcing out funding so that we carry the responsibility of transporting all the teams to the venue, as well as accommodating them for a 3-day festival of handball, so that we stimulate interest from both the Department of Education as well as the Department of Sport in the country. Once we can win the ticket of being included in club development as well as in handball in schools, we will definitely shall have achieved our objectives.
Thank you, Ali. I would like to ask Edson, from your side, because Frank also mentioned just now the challenge in Germany, and where they say they have a third of the gym only, and I know also from the work, maybe Ali can come later back to you as well towards that. We often have less space. How is the situation in Zimbabwe? So at the schools, do you always find best circumstances or like possibilities to teach handball? And if not, what are you doing? Sorry.
Okay, I'm unmuted now. Thank you, Nicola. In Zimbabwe, the situation in terms of handball facilities, I'm sure we are still lagging behind, because countrywide we have only one standard hall that was built in 1995 for All Africa Games in terms of an indoor handball facility. And of course, another hall that is in the country which can be converted, which is a multi-sports hall that we can also use. So those are the two major standard facilities for indoor handball. But most of the schools' competitions and even trainings, they are played on outdoor facilities where most activities are done on grass. And some schools, of course, have had to develop some hard surface or concrete courts. But basically, in terms of participation of in schools, it's quite huge, because handball is also in the school's curriculum. And like I said before, we now have handball starting from even the primary schools right up to secondary schools in the curriculum, and also even outside the curriculum during the co-curricular or competitions for handball activities. Through our school system, again, we have an organized handball management where each category, maybe the primary schools, have a structure of heads in charge. Headmasters of schools, they are also in charge of handball in Zimbabwe. Thank you.
So does it mean that in primary schools, like say, if I would envision now there's a school, they don't really have a proper field, because you mentioned there are only 2 really indoor fields in the country, but then you have maybe a smaller space or you have grass. Do you still play the same handball as you would play it as we know it from a club? Or do you adjust it? How does also the teacher, do they get another, did they get different options? How does it work? Edson, if you...
Okay, starting with the primary schools, we have adopted the IHF handball at school program, where our teachers were trained on handball at school activities. And using that handball at school project or program, we use the facilities or the balls, the standard balls for primary schools. And also our primary schools are playing some form of mini handball in their curriculum. But coming to the competitions, they are playing the normal or the standard handball games in a proper field. And that also applies with the secondary schools. They are also using the proper handball standards by the rules of IHF in terms of their participation. But in the curriculum, school curriculum, mainly focuses on teaching basic skills. They teach the basic skills of handball, be it passing, dribbling, feinting, goalkeeping, the defense, attack, just the basics curriculum teaches. Thank you.
Thank you, Edson. It's interesting because also Frank mentioned just now before that some of the teachers in Germany, they are not really secure about the sport. They're afraid because there's like it's a body contact involved. It's a fast sport. Maybe not only like about their responsibilities to keep the children as well safe. And I'm not sure, maybe I'd like to give to Leif first. How is it in Denmark? Do you also have, I know you are in a sports school, but say, let's speak on the general public schools. Are teachers opened to handball or contact sport?
No, it's the same as all the others in a elementary school or primary school or government school. Lots of the teachers who are teaching in the gyms, they don't like to teach handball. As they said before, it's a difficult game. There's many rules, so it's not the sports that are used primary when there are children. All the practice is normally in the clubs in the afternoon or in the evening when the boys and girls go there. So it's from the age of 13. Some of the schools then they specialize in taking handball players or football players, volleyball players. But until they are 13 years, it's the same as Frank said. Some of the teachers in schools are handball coaches, and they like to play handball in the school. The same if the teacher is volleyball player, he likes to teach volleyball. So no, it's the same difficult for the youngest handball players. They don't learn it in elementary school or primary school in government schools until they're 13 years. It's a difficult game.
Is there an approach, like say, because Frank just mentioned might be a development here, especially is interesting now and see how can we implement handball better in primary schools. But from your side, is there like an approach or a methodology developed? What can we change?
Yeah, the way that the Danish Handball Federation is trying to get it in the schools, it's that the clubs, the volunteers in the clubs, they sometimes give they can go to the local schools and say, we would like to come here for 4 or 6 times, and if it's possible, we would like to take the classes when they go to the halls. and we would like to teach them how to play handball. We would like to make a little tournament in our town, so the 3 government schools that are here, they play against each other one day, and then we try to do it that way. But it has to be, you have to have a knowledge about handball. So that's the way the federation, handball federation, way to try to that. That's, they help the clubs, give them support so they can go out and introduce the schools to handball. But it's all through the volunteers from the handball clubs in the near of the school.
Okay, thank you. Maybe before I'm going further, I would like to ask Sim if there's any questions already from the audience, maybe?
Not so far, Nicola.
Okay, then we keep on. But if anyone has a question, also from people who are listening now, please write your questions in the chat box. Then we also can, from time to time, ask these questions to the guests as well. Ali, I would like to know, because we're still in handball in school, and how is it actually accepted? What are the challenges? How is the situation in South Africa? So, because there are private schools and there are public schools, and is sports in general well established, and is there a difference between the 2 schools or types of schools?
Thanks. The culture of sport within the country is slightly fading away, especially in public schools. And when you look at private schools, that's where you see a strong culture of sport. For an example, when it comes to handball, throughout the country, I can tell we've got only 3 schools that are having fully fledged handball facilities and are taking handball very seriously. And those schools are your German school in Johannesburg, German school in Pretoria, as well as German school in Cape Town. The rest are just schools that are participating in handball through makeshift fields, no proper facility, and that in itself is also affecting the growth of our sport. Hence, we are committing ourselves towards changing that particular space, because we see massive potential for handball growth in the country. Once we can get included into the Department of Education and we be a priority sport, that will also attract a lot of support into the sport, because at the moment we are competing against the big 5 sporting codes, as well as other emerging sporting codes. And athletes are spoiled for choice. They like being where there is more competition. And when you look at the current status of handball in the country, we are having few competition compared to other sporting codes. That is another area that we are navigating towards ensuring that we intensify interest amongst our athletes as well as administrators, because we've been having less competition compared to other sporting codes in the country.
Yeah, thank you, Ali. I would like to ask to Edson this question, because also Ali mentioned now the possibility of competitions, and how is it and you said like in Zimbabwe there are competitions in the schools. How important is it for the acceptance of the sport, or for the children to enjoy the sports in schools?
Okay, Nicola, thank you so much for the question. In Zimbabwe, so far, there's been a huge acceptance of handball in schools, but this is mainly in public schools. Most of our private schools have not yet taken handball seriously, or maybe as a sport code of their choice, because they are still taking much interest in other sports like the elite sports, we call them here, rugby, hockey, swimming, cricket. But we also intend to also spread or make handball active in private schools. But it would be coming to our public schools, the issue of competition is the one that has actually brought more interest of participation from the schools or even from the participants themselves, because their competitions, they are gradual. They grow from the clusters from a certain level up to national level. So that kind of competition, the winning team at a cluster level will proceed to a zonal level, to district, provincial, up to national level. So that kind of competition has actually brought about a lot of interest in terms of participation of schools, especially government schools in Zimbabwe.
Thank you. I have one question, which is from schools linking to clubs. So because you said the acceptance in public schools is there, so most of all the public schools that play handball, and especially because also they compete against other schools, is also that through this approach has been more clubs developed, or was it opposite around? What was first there, or what supported the development? The school of the clubs, or the clubs of the development of the schools?
So can you come again? I just missed part of that question.
So the question is, like you said, that the competition, the school is very established. And I was wondering if this also affected or has an impact on how many new clubs come up in the country, or were there first the clubs and then the clubs helped to develop the handball in school? So what was it? Which way around?
Yeah, in our case, handball is actually more dominant in the school than the club system. And we actually hope and look forward to seeing more activities outside school. In the past, we have had handball, very few handball clubs, but because of the development of handball in high school and primary schools, now we are seeing even the tertiary beginning to have more handball activities. So most of our clubs at senior level, they are established at tertiary, but we are now also in the plan of pushing to have more handball clubs, which are junior clubs, so that we can also establish a junior league where these can also play outside school competitions.
Okay, thank you so much, Edson, for that. Frank, because we are just speaking now from Zimbabwe side, there have been a good development in schools, and as I understood, the juniors are playing more, competing more in school, but for the senior level, there are also clubs outside of it, or when you go to college. Do you think that if there would be a competition in school, or let's say, is there a competition in school between schools, would that improve the possibility of the growth of the sports?
Yes, I think so. We have some small competitions in Germany for school teams. For the elementary school, we have small tournaments, but it's different in the regions. In Hamburg or Schleswig-Holstein, we have some small tournaments. In some other regions, there are no tournaments and no competitions. So we need a concept from the German Handball Federation. We have some action days for elementary schools or primary schools. And after that, in secondary schools, we have a competition called Youth Train for Olympia. And schools can build a handball team, and they can play regional tournaments. And the winner of these tournaments will stay in Berlin for a final tournament. And this is, I think, a very good competition, but it's not enough. Because I think it's just like a satellite. We have handball in school, and the other satellite is handball in the clubs. And we don't have any connections, or we have to build more connections. And I think this is the great problem in Germany. There are some competitions, but we have to build more competitions. Maybe we have to think about if a good school team can play against clubs in a normal season.
It would be interesting, yeah. Thank you, Frank, for your opinion towards that. Some people told me there's a question from the audience. Maybe we can put this question forward.
There are two questions actually, but the first one is from Farai, and I believe is in Zimbabwe. Question for South Africa. Why don't you have a strategy of doing workshops in your country through experts in your country to develop your own coaches who will be teachers in the schools? And in Zimbabwe, apparently they've implemented this successfully. Ali, I believe that's for you.
Thanks very much for the question. From South African perspective, we have had a challenge of more people attending workshops which are not accredited. And that in itself has affected a lot of personnel from participating in such kind of workshops. Hence, at the moment, we are engaging International Handball Federation to come on board in ensuring that all the workshops that we are going to run forward, they are going to be accredited. So that particular plan is in place, of which we are having a strong background of clubs compared to schools handball, of which we also resolved in the past that each and every club that is existing within the country, it should find itself at least attached towards supporting as well as developing handball to at least a minimum of 3 primary schools around that particular club and 2 secondary schools. So that particular plan is already in place. We are enforcing it towards ensuring that we grow handball in schools through clubs.
Thank you, Ali. Sim, the other question?
Yes, the other question is from Robin Chan from the US, and it's directed to Edson. Edson, the question is, it's a couple of questions actually. Can you describe how handball was introduced into the schools? What was the key in getting approval or acceptance from these schools? How did you train the coaches or referees to be able to play games properly?
Thank you for the question. In Zimbabwe, we managed to, as an association, we managed to train some instructors, some local instructors in coaching and in refereeing. And these instructors were then deployed to run some courses, some local courses in schools to train teachers in coaching and officiating. So a massive training was done from primary school for primary school teachers and secondary school teachers over the years. And that on its own has led to us having more qualified people in schools that can coach and even officiate handball. And also the coming in of the competition was also through the curriculum or the education system of Zimbabwe, where sport is mandatory in schools. And amongst the sport codes that are mandatory, handball was also part of those sports. So with the capacitation that the association brought about, and this actually led for handball to easily spread and also to be taken up in schools. I hope I've answered the question.
Okay, if there are no questions for now, then I will also pose another question forward. So we heard like that, especially we were by the leagues and the games and how can maybe a competition support. And I see there are different approaches, because when I see now from Ali what he's telling, and also Edson, that the federation is quite pushing forward to get handball into schools. And as I heard from Denmark and Germany, that a bit more the approach, sport has been in school, handball has been in school, and it's more a way how can there be maybe more support from the maybe from the federation to able to grow it better. But I would like to ask a general question. If you come to the purpose of sports in school, what is there the main strategy? Is it the reason, maybe let's say in Denmark, do you have why is sport taught in school? Why is sport important in school? Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, but in Denmark, it's the reason why the clubs are so big is that's where our culture has sent us to the clubs when we have to be together with each other. It's we have a big history in using time together in the clubs. It's a big part of the Danish culture that we are using. The Danish term is hygge. It's a way that we're getting cozy together, use time together there, and use lots of time there. And that's a part of in the school. Why is it in the school yet? It's because when we do athletics and when we do sports, when we use ourselves in a game or in a play, and when we play together, then you learn a lot about other persons. So it's a very big thing in the Danish culture that you are doing athletics or gyms, because it's just a part of learning other people to know how they are. And it's a term here in Denmark that you learn more about one person if you play together with them for 20 minutes instead of talking with them in 1 hour. So that's a way of the culture. It's just a big part of the way we're going to school. It's also our way of thinking that if the children, they move and they use their body, then they'll learn a lot more. So it has always been a big part of our culture here. So that's why sports and gyms are so. It's a very big thing in Denmark. They have to move every day because they don't do that all the time at home, because now it's been a part of the government plan to make sure that every day at school you have gyms, gymnastics or sports, so you can learn a little bit better.
That's good. That's an interesting approach to really have like every day a sports session. How is it in Germany, Frank? Can you put there a bit of a?
I just can repeat live words. I think in Germany, handball, but also other sports develop kids and pupils, especially in their social behavior. And this is my main topic in the elementary school. For example, they have to act with victory and loss. So we play many different games, and they are happy if they win the game, and they are laughing and happy, but also they have to act with a loss. So they have to think about what can I do better next time, and I have to show respect for the performance of the winner team. And this is especially for the young kids a great topic. On the other side, you have to develop coordination. We have some kids and they have very difficulties to run backwards or simple things, and so we can train this part, and we have to train athletics and gymnastics and so on. And this is the main topic. The next topic is we can support our regions, our clubs, our federations, and if we see some talents in a special sport, for example, handball, volleyball, football, whatever, we can connect to the clubs and talk to them. So club, you can visit us in our sport lesson, and you can see our talents, and maybe you have some new members. This is a small topic, but also important, I think.
No, it's very important. I think how schools can connect with clubs to also support the club development and talent identification. I think that's also a very interesting topic as well. I think there's another question came in. Zim, do you want to ask this question? Is there something?
Yes, Nicola, there is a question from David, and I think it's a general question. And the question is, as COVID took a wide negative influence on 2020, do you also see a positive aspect as a result of pandemic for handball development or for your organization?
Good. I think the question is to anyone who wants to answer this question.
Yes, Nicola, I want to answer first. I'm sure the issue of the COVID-19 pandemic is something that we need to think about seriously as organizations, because in Zimbabwe now there's a new way of, or maybe they are saying COVID-19 has come to stay, and the new normal is to adjust and continue to do business even amidst COVID-19 pandemic. So like in Zimbabwe, we said that training of teachers, of coaches has not stopped because of the pandemic, just like the IHF strategy, where they are having some online webinars, online courses and trainings. We've also adopted the same system. And with the new approval for resumption, we are saying handball activities should go on, but some clubs, some schools, some teams should begin to also apply the protocols of using the proper way or safe way of having the activities going on, rather than stop and say ends. So we have just to adjust to the new normal and also adapt and make sure we ensure safety during the competitions. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who likes to add, maybe? Is there someone who says there was a positive impact, a positive change brought up?
Thanks, Nicola. From ourselves in South Africa, it has also given us some positive spin-offs in terms of planning, as well as focusing ahead of us. So we have also managed to have some few virtual workshops taking place as a result of this COVID-19. And one other interesting aspect is that provinces have made a loud cry for competition to be given the permission to have their competition. So there is much starvation and much interest for handball activities to take place. I'm speaking at the moment, we are having about 6 tournaments that will be taking place across the country in this coming weekend. And all of them are as a result of trying to resuscitate and recover the lost time we had in 2020. So the kind of appetite that is at play will certainly augur well with us towards implementing our plans come 2021.
Thank you, Ali. I would like to maybe also ask some of you, but we will ask it afterwards. But maybe does someone of you guys have a question to the other guests? So what came up in this conversation for now? Do you would like to ask the question to one of the others? So, I think Ali was asked.
Thanks very much. My question will go to Leif in Denmark. Basically, I'm quite certain that given the facilities for handball in your country, and you compare them to where we are in South Africa, we are 100% 8 years back in catching up with what is happening in Denmark. Can you just share with us the strategy towards maintaining all those amazing facilities that you are having in the country, as well as the growth of handball? Because I saw amazing structures when we were there during the World Men's Championship in 2019.
Thank you, Ali.
Yeah, Ali, thank you for that question. Yeah, well, I would say that it's a quite great big part of our country paying taxes. It's we are paying one of the highest taxes in the world, as I understand it. So our government also uses the resources to make sure that the halls and the training halls are here, but also the local cities are also again, as in our history, they're trying to make the best ways that our community can be together, and it's been part of our history to go to halls or go to places where we can be together and that in those years, halls has always been a big part of it. But it's because of the taxes in Denmark. It's the government who's paying for many of the halls, or all the halls exactly. But so when it goes out to the regions and it goes from the government, it's from the taxes, all of it.
Thank you, Leif. Anyone else who wants to ask a question to the group? Frank, do you have a question maybe?
Yes, Nicola.
Yes, Edson.
Yes, I also have understood the situation in Denmark. I want to ask maybe what's the strategy in Germany? How do they fund their handball or sport activities? Because here, in terms of funding to enhance maximum participation and even to have a competitive league, that is also one of the challenges that we are facing. Maybe if we can also get in German in terms of supporting funding of handball activities, be it in schools or outside schools.
I think just a reply. It was a bit broken, but I think Frank got it. So the question is, how are the strategies of support towards funding of handball in schools, but also outside schools? Is there any support, or how does it work?
We have small supports from the German Federation. There are some papers and maybe some video clips in YouTube channels. But I think the main reason is, do you have some handball persons in the school, so they have their own ideas and they are active. And sometimes you have very good regional federations, but it's very different in Germany. In some regions, there are many activities and many special handball school days or something like that. But in some regions, there are nothing. And so I think it's important that the German Federation will develop some concepts for all regions.
Is it, sorry to interrupt you, is it financed by, so who finances it then? If there are like school league, something like this?
Very good question. I have to be careful to answer this. I think the German Federation. I think the German Federation is about their national teams and want to support the teams, especially the men team. And I think there are not enough financial support for the main teams like school or kids handball. And so the regions have to find support by some other ideas, maybe to have the regional government and they can find some financial support at this place. But the German Federation is on another way at this time.
Thank you. I think that is also good. I hope, Edson, that answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
Because I would like to maybe just put this question to Ali, because Ali, you're also the president of South African Handball Federation, and I know in Germany or in Denmark, as I got it from the conversation, the schools are kind of more under the education department and the government, and the federations are more responsible for the clubs. And we'll see then sometimes local clubs will come into schools to promote their own, like their club, that more players will join, more members will join the clubs, but it's kind of like left to the clubs to do that, or left to the local federations to do that. So Ali, in South Africa, because how is there the situation? Is it really, it is requested from you, as it's one strategy as a federation probably to get into the schools, but who is responsible there for the school sports?
As a federation, we remain responsible towards stimulating the presence of handball across all the schools. For the period under review, we have engaged in strengthening our provincial governance. We visited almost 5 provinces towards ensuring that their structures are able to live up to the task of developing handball in schools through clubs, and we are remaining with 4 provinces that we still have to engage so that they are able to also buy the concept of developing handball in schools through clubs. It is also in our plan to ensure that come April, May, June, all provinces are expected to be engaging in establishing their own provincial handball leagues. And we have also agreed that amongst those particular leagues to be self-sustainable, no team should bring any player older than 20 years so that we are able to focus on the development side of things and build towards the future. And over and above that, we are biased towards focusing on under 16 development for both beach handball as well as normal indoor handball. So those are the areas where we find a pool of school-going athletes. So it is our responsibility as a federation to stimulate that particular interest. We cannot delegate it to anybody else.
No, I agree, exactly. So that from the federation, because you also need kind of the support, and I think there is an interaction between how can sports be taught in school, how can it then also grow towards more clubs on the other side as well, and how can the federation and the schools work there together. I think there is another question in the audience before I might also ask Leif if he has another question, or Frank. But Sim, is there a question in the audience?
Yes, there's a question from Martin, who's also in Denmark. But before I go to that question, there was something from Robin, and she was trying to find out where she can find some good resources to teach handball to primary and secondary school students. And she was wondering if there are any YouTube channels or any resources. So for any of the 4 speakers or anyone in the group chat, if you have any good resources, you can just drop the links here. And I see Frank has already done that. And the question from Martin is, one question to Ali and to Edson, please. How big or large are the training groups in the school or the clubs, and how long is your practice time?
We are having a very small number of schools that are able to sustain their handball activities. Hence, most of our athletes are attached to clubs compared to schools. But in terms of the school-orientated programs, we appreciate centers that are emerging as the hotspot for handball development. Like in Gauteng, we've got Ekurhuleni region, which is consistently allowing schools to participate in the afternoon programs, which last up to 2 to 3 hours during the course of the week. The same can be said with what is happening in Western Cape. There's a huge pool of schools that are participating in handball, where 2 to 3 hours each day during the week is dedicated to that particular program of developing handball in school. The same with Eastern Cape. So it is on other 6 provinces where we are still struggling in making inroads, but we are not sitting in our laurels. We are definitely tapping in. The last province that we visited was Northwest as well as the Free State. They are also coming on board towards the participation in as far as handball in schools are concerned. And one other interesting aspect that I picked from Leif as well as Frank is that they've got a strong background of curriculum approach in as far as handball is concerned. And in South Africa, we are having our long-term development plan, which was aimed at shaping the method of teaching handball in the country, being abandoned. And through this particular interaction, I'm tempted to request that we speak offline towards ensuring that we conclude that particular long-term development plan so that we are able to have an approach in developing as well as sustaining the growth of handball in the country. Thanks.
Thank you, Ale. Edson, how on your side? Yeah.
Yeah, in Zimbabwe, we have about 20, maybe the numbers they range, because in each school we have a boys and a girls team for mixed sex schools, but for those with boys only, the numbers may also be a little bit low. But we're looking at around 30 to 40 participants, and the training sessions usually run for about 2 hours, and that is done twice a week. Of course, in some schools, they've gone further to do their trainings every day, but most common is twice.
Okay, thank you, Edson. I wanted to ask maybe Leif, do you have the questions towards the other guests, which you would like to ask? What is your interest?
For me, it's interesting to know in the way in Denmark we are trying to go the other way. I can say that we're trying to change the tournaments for the children. So we're trying to go away from the court being 20 times 14 meters. So we are trying to play on a smaller field to make sure that the children are touching the ball more and getting more shots and goals. So when Elio asked me about all the big halls and all here, we are trying to go the other way with the children, just for an idea. So when you, Ali, are talking about courts, are we talking about 20 times 40 meters, or what is your idea of courts when we're talking about courts?
The very same 20 by 40.
Okay, thank you. Then I would like to yeah, maybe afterwards introduce you to the way that we are sometimes playing 20 square 20, and we are playing the opposite way on the court. So that also gives us space for more players when you're 20, 40 players every time. But I can do that afterward and tell you a little about that. It can work in the schools to play that way with the children. We are playing in Danish tournaments up to 11, 12 years, and that way only 4 players on the court at the same time. But I'll do it afterwards.
Interesting. Thank you, Leif. Frank, do you have a question you would like to ask?
No, thank you. At this time, I don't have any questions, but it's very interesting to hear all the speakers and to compare the situations in Germany, in Denmark, and in South Africa. It's very interesting. Thank you for that.
Thank you. I have a question. I would like to know, is there a difference between girls and boys, how handball is taught in school? Maybe Frank, so maybe from your side first, as you didn't have a question.
I have to talk about school, and there we have no differences because we have a class with 20 to 24 pupils, and we have girls and boys. And we have to watch the class, and some kids are very talented, and so we have to act in another way with them. But in the clubs, it's very different. You can see now the Women's European Championship, and there are only in Germany only a live stream, but no free TV. And if you will see the Men's World Championship in January, you can see it on the free TV. So this is the first evidence to compare men and women in Germany. But I think the training lessons and the games are very, very similar.
Are you playing in mixed teams with the youth, or and under which age group maybe?
We play in mixed teams with younger kids in the age of, I think, 5 to 7. And I think at the age of 8, we play in girls teams and boys teams.
Okay. So that means like in schools, there's no difference between boys and girls, and because you get everyone together, besides if there would be a only girl or only boy school, but in clubs level, from a specific kind of age, you start to play with boys. Edson, how is it in Zimbabwe? Because you mentioned there are only boys schools and only girls schools as well. So, but how is it in general also at the public schools? Yeah.
Yeah, in Zimbabwe, the ancient training, or when
you move your
training, they are divided into different groups, where in most cases, okay, I was in terms of the training methods, or the training, the frequency, and also the activities that they engage. But what they do is, girls at a mixed school will train as girls, and also boys will train as boys. I've not seen in some cases where they are mixed, but their trainings are done separately, where girls train on their own and also boys train on their own.
Also in schools, is it like also in private schools you always have the sport separately, like girls for them, boys on the other side? Is it yeah, just I was curious again. Yeah. Now,
yeah, where their facilities, yeah, their facilities, they are divided, but in some cases we can divide the into two halves, where the boys use the other half and the girls are training from the other half, but using the same field.
Ali, how is it in South Africa? Is there, I know handball is not as established yet in schools, but also maybe from the experience from other sports. Is there generally a difference between how girls and boys are taught in school, and also maybe the acceptance of the sports? Is there, from which maybe is a bigger interest of girls and boys, or is it similar?
Lack of facilities doesn't create the luxury of having a dedicated time to focus on the development of boys and girls separately. Most of the clubs or institutions that are participating in handball, you find in their practice sessions, the training for boys and girls is run concurrently, simultaneously. And that in itself has proven to be of great benefit, especially to girls' development, as it fast tracks their strength as well as the ability to be competitive, as compared to benefiting the boys' counterparts, because it also weakens them. It is only on the day of the match that you get to realize the impact of such particular trend. But in general, most practice sessions, you find mixed sessions, of which those mixed sessions, they benefit more of girls as compared to the boys.
So even like on a like more senior level, let's say, not only the young kids, unfortunately, when you come to 16 plus, is there like the training teams?
I'm unable to get the question. The line is breaking.
Yeah. Okay. So I was asking because you said it's actually beneficiary to also train in mixed teams, because sometimes it would strengthen the goals to become more like stronger on the field. So I was wondering, do you train like also like the senior clubs? Are they like from 16 plus? Do they also train in mixed teams? Ali, you need to unmute yourself.
On senior players, mostly that's where it becomes practically possible to have male players practicing on their own and female practicing on their own. So it is on rare occasion where you find senior players practicing being mixed teams. Mostly on juniors, that's where we foresee that particular practice being enjoyed across the country.
Thank you, Ali. Thank you so much. I have, Sim, is there one more question from the audience? Otherwise, I have a last question which I would like to ask.
No question, Nicola.
Okay, because I would like to ask, we spoke also about talent identification, and someone, I think, mentioned, I think it was from Frank, who mentioned that the schools are actually inviting the clubs to come as well if you see a talent who might then join afterwards the club. How is the talent identification system, or how is it organized in Denmark, Leif?
how's the talent system? That's a big question, because we have a federation talent system that makes sure that the clubs send the players to regional training, and from there, as they grow older, they go to national trainings. But at the same time, at the schools, in some of our schools, our private schools, they have to ask if they make, I can't remember the English term for it, but they have to send an application. That was application for being a part of the schools, and some schools are using trainings to look if the talents make them capable of going to the schools. In other schools like ours and lots of other boarding schools in Denmark, we just have a lot of handball players, so they come there and go here for 1 year, and that's also a way that the clubs and the schools are using it to find out who's capable of playing handball, who has the mentality of playing handball. So we have 2 different systems: our federation systems and then the school systems. But in the end, when you're finished at school, if you're good enough, you go to the federation systems. So there's a lot of persons who are using times on talent identifications here in Denmark on different grounds. But also, again, it's a big culture to play handball in Denmark. It's nearly a country sport, not a national sport for all people. So when the ladies are playing European Championships here, there all the channels are focusing, all the newspapers are focusing on handball right now. So that's also a big difference between Denmark and Germany. So it's a big culture in Denmark. That's why we have so many handball players here.
So, it was a question also like to the European Championships. Are there a lot of schools going at a school class? Okay, maybe at the moment, because we don't have the situation that with COVID-19, but if it would not be there, like say in a past, would schools go as a school class to a competition and watch the game with the teachers?
Yeah, for sure. It's a big thing. So the schools even go abroad when the championships are in Germany or Croatia, or then the private schools go there to see handball. So yeah, it's a big cultural thing. And also in the question earlier about tournaments, the public schools play tournaments against each other. The private school play their own tournament against each other's, and then they also play tournaments in the clubs. So yeah, it's a big cultural thing here in Denmark.
Thank you, Leif. I have one last question, and I also saw that it was also asked from the audience. Martin posed this question, but I will take this as a last question to everyone. What do you like most of your work, of your job? What is, maybe everyone just with a short sentence as to finish this session, what do you like most? Who likes to answer?
I was too fast because I just wrote it down in the chat. In my work, I like the most to work with kids, to give them the education they need, especially physical and social education, and to see their education and to see their development in 4 years. In our elementary school is about 4 years, and then they change to secondary school. And this is very, very exciting and very joyful.
Thank you, Frank. Ali, what do you like?
Thanks very much. There's one thing that I like the most: seeing an athlete developing from very unknown condition into becoming a national or an international asset. I can cite an example. Beach handball is mostly played in coastal provinces, but I was happy to see a number of inland provinces having most of their athletes in inland provinces contesting and competing against athletes from coastal provinces, even outperforming those athletes from coastal provinces. So such kind of development from rare background is an inspiration to one.
Thank you so much, Ali. Leif, do you like?
Yeah. I'll try to do it short. I like to see the spark in the eyes of the girls and boys when they play together, when they development, when they found out that there's something they're capable of. And the best part today is having the chance of meeting up with all of you. That's also a big thing at my work. I learn a lot of different interesting people to know all the time. That's a fantastic thing.
Thank you, Leif. And Edson, would you like to share with us as well what you like?
Yes, I have a passion for working with young people, especially with children in schools, and also desire to impart life skills through sport and training, and particularly handball. So I envisage to see young people grow, even to become professionals as they desire in sport. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I think we are at our end of this session, and I like to thank all the speakers, the guests. I like to thank you, Leif, coming from Denmark, Edson in Zimbabwe, Ali in South Africa, and Frank in Germany, to have such an international group talking here today about the topic how handball is actually established, or not yet as much established in school, but might be in the future. And as you said, it's good that we have this platform, and I really hope that we from PlayHandball can provide more such platforms as well to exchange and speak across borders. And yeah, so if you are fine, I will also share definitely in the afterwards, we share with you the information about everything, and then you can also start in the conversation if that is wanted. Thank you so much. Thanks to everyone who joined as well in, and we'll just as a last shot share the screen again so that you know where you can find us, where you can be informed about maybe new talks coming up or new programs. What are we doing to also help the development of handball in South Africa and Southern Africa, but also beyond that. And yeah, thanks a lot and have a wonderful Christmas time as well. I hope everyone can still enjoy it in a good way. Cheers.